No human being, just human being, cannot like a cartoon. No, how fast? That's the fast you can be. Even Muhammad Ali, right now Tyson, the punch fast, but you still can see. When Bruce Lee kick, you don't shake your eyes because when you shake your eyes, you cannot see Bruce Lee kick. Know how fast?
The year was 1972. Hong Kong's film industry was exploding with martial arts fever, and on a sweltering afternoon inside Golden Harvest Studios, a young stuntman named Jackie Chan stood frozen in place. Not from fear, though there was plenty of that, but from something he had just witnessed that would haunt him for the rest of his life. Bruce Lee had just moved. But moved isn't the right word. What Jackie saw defied everything he thought he knew about human capability. "I didn't see him punch," Jackie would later confess in an interview that sent shockwaves through the martial arts community. "I only saw my face getting closer to his fist." This wasn't hyperbole. This wasn't the exaggeration of a star-struck apprentice. This was Jackie Chan, a man who had gone to perform some of the most dangerous stunts in cinema history, admitting that Bruce Lee operated on a level that seemed to break the laws of physics. But how fast was Bruce Lee really? And why, decades after his death, do legends like Jackie Chan still struggle to find words adequate enough to describe what they witnessed?
When Bruce Lee kick, you don't shake your eyes because when you shake your eyes, you cannot see Bruce Lee kick. Know how fast?
Jackie Chan was nobody in 1972. He was one of dozens of stuntmen and extras working grueling hours for minimal pay, hoping to catch a break in an industry that chewed up and spit out hopefuls daily. Bruce Lee, on the other hand, had just returned from Hollywood as a conquering hero. The Big Boss and Fist of Fury had shattered box office records. He wasn't just a star, he was a phenomenon. When Jackie first arrived on the set of Enter the Dragon, he was assigned to the underground lair fight sequence. His job was simple: get hit by Bruce Lee, fall dramatically, and stay out of the way. Simple, he thought. He'd been training in martial arts since childhood at the China Drama Academy under Master Yu Jim Yuen. He'd taken countless falls, performed dangerous acrobatics, and worked with some of Hong Kong's finest action choreographers. Nothing prepared him for Bruce Lee. The first take began. Jackie and several other stuntmen rushed at Lee in a choreographed attack pattern they'd rehearsed for hours. Then it happened. Bruce moved, and Jackie's body reacted before his brain could process what occurred. He found himself on the ground, pain radiating through his shoulder, staring up at the studio lights. The entire sequence had taken perhaps 3 seconds. "Get up," the assistant director barked. "We're going again." But Jackie couldn't move immediately, not from injury, though his shoulder throbbed, but from shock. He had been watching Bruce Lee's chest, waiting for the telegraphed movement that signals an incoming strike. There had been nothing. No wind-up, no shoulder rotation, no shift in weight. Bruce's fist had simply arrived. During a break, Jackie approached one of the senior stuntmen, a man named Lam Ching Ying, who had worked on The Big Boss. Jackie asked the question that was burning in his mind. "How do you defend against someone you can't see moving?" Lam laughed, but it wasn't a cheerful sound. "You don't," he said, lighting a cigarette with shaking hands. "You just pray he pulls his punches." This became the unofficial motto among the stunt team working on Enter the Dragon. Bruce Lee had a reputation, deserved and earned, for absolute precision. He could stop a full-power strike a millimeter from a person's face. But the psychological terror of seeing that fist coming, knowing you were completely helpless to stop it, never diminished. Jackie would later describe it in interviews. Working with Bruce wasn't about fighting. It was about surviving. You had to trust completely that he knew where his weapons were at all times, because you certainly didn't. But what made Bruce Lee so impossibly fast? Was it genetics, training, something else entirely? The answer, as Jackie would discover, was far more complex than anyone imagined.
When I look at Bruce Lee, he's a very nice person and very strange guy. And he always want to be the number one. And nobody can touch him.
Bruce Lee was obsessed with being the top guy. While other martial artists focused on power or technique, Bruce had become fixated on one question: how do you remove every unnecessary movement from an attack? He studied fencing, where Olympic athletes move at speeds that require slow-motion cameras to analyze. He studied boxing, particularly Muhammad Ali, whose jab was described by opponents as appearing from nowhere. But Bruce went further. He began applying principles from physics and biomechanics that were decades ahead of his time. He understood that speed isn't just about fast-twitch muscle fibers, though he had those in abundance. Speed is about economy of motion. Jackie noticed this during the second day of filming. Between takes, he watched Bruce shadowbox. What struck him wasn't the speed, though it was breathtaking, but the absolute stillness that preceded each movement. Bruce would stand motionless, breathing steadily, and then explode into action with zero transition period. There was no get ready poise, no preparation, just stillness, then violence. It was like watching a snake strike, Jackie recalled. You ever see a cobra? It doesn't coil back before it attacks. It's just there, and then it's in your face. Bruce was like that, except snakes are slow compared to him. The stunt team began timing Bruce during practice sessions. Using a stopwatch, they tried to measure the duration of his straight lead, his signature punch. The fastest recorded time was 0.05 seconds from a standing position. To put that in perspective, the average human requires 0.25 seconds just to react to a visual stimulus. Bruce could complete his entire punching sequence in the time it took most people to begin processing that they'd seen something. But here's what terrified Jackie the most. Bruce could go faster. The fourth day of shooting brought the sequence that would become legendary among Hong Kong stuntmen. The scene required Bruce to fight his way through an underground corridor, dispatching enemies in rapid succession. Jackie was positioned in the middle of the pack, meant to absorb a kick and fall backward into other stuntmen. The assistant director called action. Bruce moved through the first wave of attackers like a scalpel through silk. Then he reached Jackie's position. What happened next occurred so quickly that 3 different camera angles failed to capture it clearly. Bruce fainted high, or at least that's what Jackie's mind interpreted. His hands started moving upward to block. But Bruce's actual attack came low, a front kick that should have been impossible to execute from that range without any preparatory movement. Jackie's body was already falling before his hands completed their upward motion. When they reviewed the footage, the entire crew gathered around the monitor in stunned silence. Frame by frame, they could see Jackie beginning his defensive response. But Bruce's kick had already landed and retracted before Jackie's hands reached their blocking position. The chronology was wrong. Jackie had started moving first, but Bruce had completed his action first. How is that possible? Someone whispered. The cinematographer, a veteran named Tadashi Nishimoto, provided the answer. He's not faster than the camera. He's faster than perception. By the time your brain tells you what's happening, he's already done 3 other things. Jackie sat in silence, ice pack pressed against his ribs. He had trained his entire life. He could perform backflips from standing positions, scale walls, and execute techniques that looked impossible, but in that moment he understood that Bruce Lee existed in a different category entirely. This wasn't about talent or dedication. This was something else. A human being who had somehow pushed past the normal limitations of biology. That evening, as the crew packed up equipment, Jackie found himself alone with Bruce in the studio lot. The legendary fighter was stretching, his movements fluid and unhurried. Jackie wanted to ask him 1,000 questions, but fear and respect kept him silent. Bruce noticed him standing there. "You want to know how to get faster," he said. It wasn't a question. Jackie nodded, not trusting his voice. "Everyone wants to be faster," Bruce continued, moving through a series of stretches that would make a gymnast jealous. "But they're thinking about it wrong. Speed isn't about moving fast. It's about moving without thought. Your mind is your biggest enemy." He stood up, facing Jackie. "Right now, you're thinking about defending. You're watching my shoulders, my hips, my feet. You're trying to predict what I'll do. That's why you're slow. But by the time you see the attack and decide to defend, I've already hit you and moved on to the next target. You're living in the past, trying to respond to something that's already happened." Bruce demonstrated, moving through a combination so fast that Jackie's eyes couldn't track individual techniques. It looked like a blur, a continuous stream of motion without beginning or end. "The key," Bruce said, his breathing barely elevated, "is to remove the gap between stimulus and response. No thinking, no decision-making, just pure reaction based on thousands of hours of training until your body moves before your mind can interfere." Jackie would spend the next 40 years trying to understand what Bruce meant that night. Only decades later, when neuroscientists began studying the difference between conscious and unconscious response times, would he realize that Bruce Lee had somehow trained his nervous system to bypass normal cognitive processing entirely. In 1967, Bruce Lee visited a laboratory in Los Angeles where researchers were studying the biomechanics of martial arts. They wanted to measure his speed, power, and reaction time using equipment typically reserved for studying Olympic athletes. The results shocked the researchers. Bruce's reaction time, the gap between seeing a stimulus and beginning to move, was 0.09 seconds. Elite athletes typically scored around 0.15 seconds, but more incredible was his movement time. Once he began moving, his straight lead punch traveled 6 feet in 0.05 seconds. That's approximately 80 miles per hour for a movement initiated from a dead stop with no windup. For context, professional boxers typically throw jabs at around 25 to 30 miles per hour. Bruce was operating at nearly 3 times that speed with a technique that traveled twice the distance of a typical jab. When Jackie learned about these measurements years later, they confirmed what he'd always known but couldn't articulate. Bruce Lee wasn't just fast for a martial artist. He was fast by any standard, operating at speeds that placed him among the quickest recorded human movements in any discipline. But numbers don't capture the psychological impact of facing someone with that capability. Jackie tried to explain it in a 2015 interview. Imagine you're in a fight, and you absolutely know that you cannot react fast enough to defend yourself. Every attack lands before you can move. How do you maintain composure? How do you function when you're essentially helpless? Jackie Chan finished his work on Enter the Dragon with a new understanding of what was possible in martial arts cinema. He had worked with Bruce Lee, survived working with Bruce Lee, and emerged with a mission to create a different style of action filmmaking that showcased his own unique abilities, rather than trying to copy the legend. Over the following decades, as Jackie became one of the world's biggest action stars, he would frequently be asked about Bruce Lee. The question always came up: who was faster, you or Bruce? Jackie's answer never changed.
No human being, just human being, cannot like a cartoon. No, how fast? That's the fast you can be. Even Muhammad Ali, right now Tyson, the punch fast, but you still can see.
There is no comparison. Bruce existed on a different level. What I do on screen, the fights, the choreography, I can do because I control every element. We rehearse for days, we use camera angles, we edit. Bruce could do things in real time that I can only achieve through movie magic. This wasn't modesty. Jackie had legitimate claim to being one of the most physically gifted performers in cinema history. His acrobatic abilities, pain tolerance, and dedication to practical stunts are legendary. But when it came to pure speed, he recognized a hierarchy that placed Bruce Lee in a category of one. In 2020, during a podcast interview, Jackie shared a story he'd never told publicly. On the last day of filming Enter the Dragon, Bruce pulled him aside. "You're going to be a big star someday," Bruce told him, "but don't try to be me. The world doesn't need another Bruce Lee. It needs the first Jackie Chan." Jackie's voice cracked slightly as he recounted this moment. "He saw something in me that I didn't see in myself, but he also understood and wanted me to understand that trying to match his speed was pointless. He'd spent his entire life becoming that fast. I needed to spend my life becoming something else." Today, nearly 50 years after Jackie Chan stood on that set, watching Bruce Lee move at speeds that seemed to violate natural law, the question persists. How fast was Bruce Lee really? The measurements exist. The footage remains. Eyewitness accounts from dozens of people, fighters, actors, students, opponents, all tell the same story. But numbers and videos don't capture the existential shock of seeing someone move that fast in person. Jackie Chan, now in his 70s and looking back on a career that spans over 60 years, maintains that no one, not in movies, not in mixed martial arts, not in any combat sport, has matched what he witnessed Bruce Lee do on a random Tuesday afternoon in 1972. "People ask me if I think modern fighters are faster," Jackie said recently. "I tell them maybe some are close. Maybe with all our modern training methods and sports science, some athletes have reached similar speeds. But what made Bruce different wasn't just the speed, it was the precision. He could hit you with full power at full speed and stop the impact a centimeter from your face. Every single time. That's not just speed, that's control that borders on supernatural." The martial arts world has evolved dramatically since Bruce Lee's death in 1973. Training methods have improved. Athletes are stronger, faster, better conditioned. But among those who actually stood across from Bruce Lee, who felt the wind of his punches whisper past their faces, who watched helplessly as attacks landed before their nervous systems could even register the threat, there remains a consensus. Bruce Lee was the fastest. Not just fast for his era, not just fast for a martial artist. The fastest human being they had ever encountered, moving with a speed and precision that 5 decades later still seems impossible. Jackie Chan knows. He was there, he saw it, he survived it, and he spent the rest of his life trying to explain to the world what fast really means.
When Bruce Lee kick, you don't shake your eyes, because when you shake your eyes, you cannot see Bruce Lee kick. Know how fast?
Some things, he suggests, you simply have to experience to believe. And perhaps we should be grateful that Bruce Lee had the control to ensure that most people only witnessed his speed rather than felt its full impact. Because if Jackie Chan, a man who has thrown himself off buildings, through glass, and into moving vehicles, admits that facing Bruce Lee was the most terrifying experience of his career, what does that tell us about the legend himself? It tells us that sometimes the stories aren't exaggerated. Sometimes the legend is real. Sometimes a human being pushes past every limitation we think exists and shows us what's truly possible when talent, obsession, and genetics align perfectly. Bruce Lee was that fast. Jackie Chan said so. And if Jackie Chan says it, you'd better believe it.